21, The Test of the Bow. With the help of King Alcinous, Odysseus finally returns home to the shores of Ithaca, where he is met by the goddess Athena. She warns him that his palace is overrun by more than 100 suitors who, believing Odysseus is dead, want to marry Penelope and take over his fortune. Following her advice, disguises himself as a beggar and visits the palace. There he sees that two suitors in particular, Antinous and Eumaeus, are rude and demanding. Odysseus has a tearful reunion with his son Telemachus, and together they discuss how to avenge their family honor. In the meantime, Penelope, who knows nothing of this and has given up hope for Odysseus' return, proposes an marriage to her as the prize. She enters the storeroom and takes down the bow that Odysseus left behind. Now Penelope sank down, holding the weapon on her knees, and drew her husband's great bow out, and sobbed and bit her lip and let the salt tears flow. Then back she went to face the crowded hall, tremendous bow in hand, and on her shoulder hung the quiver spiked with coughing death. Behind her, her maids bore a basket full of axe heads, bronze and iron implements for the master's game. Thus, in her beauty, she approached the suitors, and near a pillar of the solid roof she paused, her shining veil across her cheeks, her maids on either hand, and still, then spoke to the banqueters. My lords, hear me. Suitors indeed, you commandeered this house to feast and drink in, day and night. My husband being long gone, long out of mind, you found no justification for yourselves, none except your lust to marry me. Stand up then. We now declare a contest for that prize. Here is my lord Odysseus' hunting bow. Bend and string it if you can. Who sends an arrow through iron axe helve sockets, 12 in line? I join my life with his and leave this place, my home, my rich and beautiful bridal house, forever, to be remembered, though I dream it only. Then to Eumaeus, carry the bow forward, carry the blades. Tears came to the swineherd's eyes as he reached out for the big bow. He laid it down at the suitor's feet. Across the room, the Antinous growled with a glance at both. Clods, they go to pieces over nothing. You two there, why are you sniveling? To upset the woman even more? Has she not pain enough over her lost husband? Sit down, get on with dinner quietly, or cry about it outside if you must. Leave us the bow. A clean-cut game it looks to me. Nobody bends that bow stave easily in this company. Is there a man here made like Odysseus? I remember him from childhood. I can see him even now. That was the way he played it, hoping inwardly to span the great horn bow with corded gut and drill the iron with his shot. He, Antinous, destined to be the first a biting arrow at his throat, a shaft drawn by the fingers of Odysseus, whom he had mocked and plundered, leading on the rest, his boon companions. So, all of these suitors have shown up to try to marry Penelope, and they have kind of taken over. She uses words like, you commandeered my home. She's not happy with them. She's not necessarily speaking kindly to them, but she is ready to move on. They've just kind of taken over her palace, and she's kind of finally starting to give up hope that Odysseus will return. So she has given them this challenge, the test of the bow, where they have to take Odysseus's bow and they have to string it, and that in itself is a challenge. Just to get it strung, hooked over, is going to be a challenge. But then they also have to take that bow, pull it, and then shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads. So that would be like if an axe, and there's a little circle at the end. So not only do they have to demonstrate some pretty extensive strength, but they also have to demonstrate that they are able to shoot that arrow. And like I said, Penelope isn't really happy about this, but she's sort of giving up hope and ready for them to move out. Now they don't necessarily like love Penelope. They're not so excited about marrying her. They want to take over his kingdom. They want the ruler. So I'll continue. So despite heating and greasing the bow, the lesser suitors prove unable to string it. The most able suitors, Antinous and Eumaeus, hold off. While the suitors are busy with the bow, Odysseus, still disguised as an old beggar, goes to enlist the aid of his trusted servants, Eumaeus the swineherd and Polites the cowherd. Two men had meanwhile left the hall, swineherd and cowherd in companionship, one downcast as the other. But Odysseus, coming up, said gently, You, herdsman, and you too, swineherd, I could say a thing to you, or should I keep it dark? No, no, speak. My heart tells me, would you be man enough to stand by Odysseus if he came back? Suppose he dropped out of a clear sky as I did. Suppose some gods should bring him. Would you bear arms for him or for the suitors? In other words, who are you loyal to? The coward said, Ah, let the master come. Father Zeus, grant our old wish. Some courier guide him back. Then judge what stuff is in me and how I manage arms. Likewise, Eumaeus fell to praying all heaven for his return, so that Odysseus, sure at least of these, told them, I am home, for I am he. I bore adversities, but in my 20th year I am ashore in my own land. I find the two of you alone among my people longed for my coming. Prayers I never heard except your own, that I might come again. What is in store for you, I'll tell you. If Zeus brings down the suitors by my hand, I promise marriages to both, and cattle, and houses built near mine. And you shall be brothers in arms of my Telemachus. Here, let me show you something else, a sign that I am he, that you can trust me. Look, this old scar from the tusk wounds that I got boar hunting on the Parasnus. Autolycus' sons and I. Shifting his rags, he barred a long gash. Both men looked and knew, and threw their arms around his head and shoulders. He as well took each man's head and hands to kiss, then said, to cut it short, else they might weep till dark. Break off, no more of this. Anyone at the door could see and tell them. Drift back in, but separately at intervals after me. Now listen to your orders. When the time comes, those gentlemen, to a man, will be dead against giving me bow or quiver. Defy them. Eumaeus, bring the bow and put it in my hands there at the door. Tell the women to lock their own door tight. Tell or groans of men in holler court, not one must show her face, but keep still at her weaving. Politus, run to the outer gate and lock it. Throw the crossbar and lash it. He turned back into the courtyard and the beautiful house and took the stool he had before. They followed one by one, the two hands loyal to him. Eumaeus had now picked up the bow. He turned it round before the licking flame to warm it up, but could not, even so, put stress upon it to jam the loop over the tip, though his heart groaned to bursting. Then he said grimly, Curse this day, what gloom I feel, not for myself alone, and not because we lose that bride. Women are not lacking in Achaia, in other towns, or on Ithaca. No, the worst is the humiliation, to be shown up for children measured against Odysseus, we who cannot even hitch the string over his bow. What shame to be repeated of us after us. And Odysseus spoke, all craft and gall. My lords, contenders for the queen, permit me. A passion in me moves to speak out. I put it to Eumaeus above all, and to the brilliant prince Antinous. But let me try my hand at the smooth bow. Let me test my fingers and my pull to see if any of the old-time kick is there, or if thin fare and roving took it out of me. Now irritation beyond reason swept them all. Since they were nagged by fear that he could string it, Antinous answered, coldly and at length, You bleary vagabond, no rag of sense is left you. Are you not clotted enough here at table, taking meat with gentlemen, your betters, denied nothing, and listening to our talk, when we have let a tramp hear all our talk? The sweet goad of wine has made you rave. So he's like, are you not happy enough just getting to be in our company? Why should you get to try? At this, the watchful Queen Penelope interposed. Antinous, discourtesy to a guest of Telemachus, whatever guest, that is not handsome. What are you afraid of? Suppose this exile put his back into it and drew the great bow of Odysseus. Could he then take me to be his bride? You know he does not imagine that. No one need let that prospect weigh upon his dinner. How very improbable it seems. At Telemachus's request, Penelope leaves the men to settle the question of the bow among themselves. The swineherd had the horned bow in his hands, moving toward Odysseus. The crowd in the banquet hall broke into an ugly din, shouts rising from the flushed young men. Ho! Where do you think you're taking that, you smutty slave? What is this dithering? We'll toss you back alone among the pigs for your own dogs to eat, if bright Apollo nods and the gods are kind. He faltered all at once, put down the bow, and stood in panic, buffeted by the waves of cries, but hearing Telemachus from another quarter shout, Go on, take him the bow! Do you obey this pack? You will be stored zoned back to your hills. Young as I am, my power is over you. I wish to God I had as much the upper hand as these. Would be suitors pitched like dead rats through our gate for the evil plotted here. Telemachus's frenzy struck someone as funny, and soon the whole room roared with laughter at him, so that all tension passed. Eumaeus picked up bow and quiver, making for the door, and there he placed them in Odysseus's hands. Calling Euryclea to his side, he said, Telemachus, lock it tight. If anyone inside should hear the shock of arms or groans of men in hall or court, not one must show her face, but go on with her weaving. The old woman nodded and kept still. She disappeared into the woman's hall, bolting the door behind her. Politus left the house, now at one bound, cat-like, running to bolt the courtyard gate. A coil of deck rope of papyrus fiber lay in the gateway. This he used for lashing and ran back to the same stool as before, fastening his eyes. And Odysseus took his time, turning the bow, tapping it every inch for borings and termites might have made, while the master of the weapon was abroad. The suitors were now watching him, and some jested among themselves. A bow lover, dealer in old bows. Maybe he has one like it at home, or has an itch to make one for himself. See how he handles it, the sly old buzzard. And one disdainful suitor added, May his fortune. But the man, skilled in all ways of contending, satisfied by the great bow's look and heft, like a musician, like a harper, when, with quiet hand upon his instrument, he draws between his thumb and forefinger a sweet new string upon a peg, so effortlessly Odysseus in one motion strung the bow, then slid his right hand down the cord and plucked it, so the top gut vibrating hummed and sang a swallow's note. In the hushed hall it smote the suitors, and their faces changed. Then Zeus thundered overhead, one loud crack for a sign. And Odysseus laughed within him that the son of crooked-minded Cronus had flung that omen down. He picked one ready arrow from his table where it lay bare. The rest were waiting still in the quiver for the young men's turn to come. He knocked it, let it rest across the hand grip, and drew the string and groove butt of the arrow, aiming from where he sat upon the stool. Now flashed arrow from twanging bow clean as a whistle through every socket ring, and grazed not one, a thud with heavy brazen head beyond. So he pulled it, and he shot it through all 12 axe heads without even hitting the side of the axe head. So then quietly Odysseus said, Telemachus, the stranger you welcomed in your hall has not disgraced you. I did not miss, neither did I take all day stringing the bow. My hand and eyes are sound, not so contemptible as the young men say. The hour has come to cook their lordships' mutton supper by daylight, other amusements later, with song and harping that adorn a feast. He dropped his eyes and nodded, and the prince, Telemachus, true son of King Odysseus, belted his sword on, clapped hand to his spear, and with a clink and glitter of keen bronze, stood by his chair at the forefront near his father. So they stay up there. Odysseus has passed the test of the bow, and so you can visualize Odysseus and Telemachus standing there like, it's on.